Welcome to this dotCMS website training for how to add content to your web page. This will cover how to create a new container of content on your web page. We're going to assume that you already know how to create a page asset and how to lock a page for editing. So for my particular test page here, I'm in edit mode, my page is locked. Now I want to add that container of content so I can add content to my page. I'm going to click on this plus sign in this body main area of my web page, and I'm going to select for the content option. Widgets would be covered in a different tutorial. This is going to bring up a content search window. I'm going to click on this plus symbol on the right-hand side of the screen and select for content generic. These other types of content that could be created will be covered in different tutorials. This is going to then generate my content generic dashboard so I can create my new content. This title field is going to be much like the friendly name field that we used for our page asset. This is going to be a name for us to uniquely identify this content in the back end of dotCMS. Our web page or our page asset, that is the name of the web page that would appear live. So this is not content that would appear live, this title field. So I'm going to call this test page because I like to name my content containers similar to my web pages. But you can name this whatever way you want so that it's easy for you to understand. Next is one of the most important fields in dotCMS, and that's the host field. Now, it defaults to the college's web address. So we need to click this drop-down option and select for this plus sign and click on our website folder that we want to save this content to. If you don't do this and you attempt to publish and save or save and publish your content, your container, you're going to receive an error that you do not have permission to actually take this action. And that's most often because we have not selected for the website folder that this new container of content is going to be saved within. All right, the next field for content and the last field that we need to fill in is the body field. Now, this is what's called a Wysiwyg Editor, these two rows of buttons that are options for us to use with our content. So I'm just going to type in some content on the page that we can then manipulate as we go through this Wysiwyg Editor. So for those of you who are familiar with website updating, this will look very familiar to you. And for those of you who are not familiar with website updating, what you can correlate this to might be the options that are available in the Word software on your computer. You have the ability to cut, copy, paste. Paste as plain text. You have the ability to emphasize your text as bold, italics, underline, strike through, that kind of thing. You have the ability to align your text in whatever way that you might like. Next is an option for a bullet list or a numbered list. And this is where I'm going to start talking to you about web accessibility. Now, there may be times when you have copied and pasted content from maybe Word or PDF or PowerPoint as your original source for your web page content, and you're going to paste it into dotCMS. And sometimes it'll come through with a special character or might be a hyphen to replace what was a formatted bullet or numbered bullet in your original document. And if I'm using a screen reader to read this particular web page because I have some sort of a disability, then I need to get this content formatted for that particular visitor so that they can actually read this content with that screen reader. So for example, if I'm using a screen reader and I just have this hyphen space gobbledygook text that I have typed in here on the screen, and the screen reader reads it, it's just going to read hyphen space gobbledygook. And it's not going to make too much sense to the person using that screen reader. But if we actually highlight that bullet and select for this bullet option, we now see that a formatted bullet comes into place, and we can select the delete button to remove that hyphen and space. And now we have a formatted bullet, and a screen reader would read this as bullet list, gobbledygook. And so that's going to make more sense to them. with that proper formatting. And so if there's additional bullets on the page, you'll just put your cursor on the page where that might be and make those additional bullets. All right, you would do the same if you were going to use a numbered list. The next row has some of the styles that are available to be used on our particular websites. Paragraph, which is what our text automatically defaults to. Address and pre, those are two things that aren't typically used very often on our web pages. And then you see heading 3 and heading 4. And you might be wondering what happened to heading 1 and heading 2. So on our website, the name of our website is considered a heading level of 1. And then the name of our web page is considered a heading level of 2, which means that any other headings on the page, once we get into that particular page on that container that we're working on, it's considered that heading level of 3. So I'm going to select my text that I have typed out to be heading, and I'm going to select for heading 3. Now, if you have additional headings that need to be nested within your main headings on the page, then you can select for those to be heading level of 4. So it's very important to follow those heading hierarchy on your page, again, for those who are using screen reader. So that's how you can apply heading to your content. Next is the insert block quote option. So I'm going to put my cursor to a new place on the page. I'm going to select this insert block quote button. And how this might be helpful is particularly if you're going to be creating an article or a digital document, or even on your regular web pages. If you have a specific quote that has been used that you'd like to highlight in a specific way, I call out more prominence to it, then you can insert what that quote text might be in this block quote field. I'm just going to say test quote. And then a citation optional. This would be the name of the person who said the quote and maybe what their title might be. So for our purposes, I don't really have something like that to fill in, but and then you can see what it looks like. We'll click the OK button, and you'll notice that this text has been made larger on the screen. It's also aligned in the middle. Here's the citation underneath it. And so that's one way you can call out some of your content on a page in more prominence. There's also the clear formatting button. This again assumes that if you've copied and pasted text from Word or PowerPoint or PDF or some other software, and there's additional formatting that comes through that didn't get cleared out just by the pasting process, you can highlight that text and then select that clear formatting button. And if it has that additional formatting, it will disappear. Let's say you might want to insert a horizontal line on the page. So for example, we want to add just this little bit of a buffer line. You can hardly see it here on the screen. I'm sorry about that. It's highlighted everything blue. But there is a little bit of a divider line that is now showing when we selected that horizontal line. Next is an option to insert a table. So again, I put my cursor in a new spot on the page. I'm going to click on this drop down for an insert table. And it's just like what we've seen in Word. We can select for how many rows and how many columns we might like for our table. And then again, for web accessibility purposes, you're going to want to highlight the top row of your table so that it can be formatted so that when a screen reader reads it, it understands that this is a header row. So I've highlighted the top row of my table. I'm going to click back into that drop-down menu, select for row and row properties. And I'm going to select for header and select OK. Now if I type in text in that top row, you'll notice that everything comes through bolded. And if I type in information in the other fields in this table, you'll notice that it just comes through as regular plain text. So this has now been formatted properly for accessibility so that this table will be read with a header row in the column, for each column. All right, now there's also an option to insert a special character. Sometimes people's names have special symbols above them. Sometimes we need to use the copyright symbols. If there are special symbols, sometimes it's related to an equation or whatnot. You can select for those things with the special character button. Now we're going to have an option to insert a hyperlink on our web page. Now, what we need to do is select for the text that we would like to insert that link within, then click on this Insert Edit Link button. This brings up the Insert Link window where I have two options. One, I can paste in a web address for a page that's either on my site or on an outside website, or I can select for an option to upload a file that somebody can download if they click on this link on my web page. So if I want to create a link, let's say I want to copy this particular web page. I'm going to paste this in here on my Wysiwyg Editor into the URL field. And then once I publish this page, this particular web page will show up with this link to this one. We're going to say that you actually want to upload a document. So to do that, we're going to click on this folder with the spyglass. This is going to bring up the Select a File window. And then I can navigate, once this loads, to my website and my Uploads folder and my Files folder. And I happen to already have a document uploaded here. This will show you whatever documents that you have that are uploaded on the site. So you can select for that, or you can upload a new file. I'm actually going to select for this document that I already have uploaded, and then I also need to include this title field. Now this title field is related to what's called hover text. Now you'll notice when I hover over this particular link on this particular web page that it shows up with some text in a square. This is what's called hover text. And whether I have a disability or not, this is going to help identify where I'm going to be taken once I actually click on this link instead of just clicking a blind link. All right, so for this purpose, this happens to be a document, so we want to include the file name for this document or the title of this document, so that might also be some helpful information. So for this particular document, it happens to be a test document. But it could end up being October meeting minutes, or it could end up being a planning report, or it could be an Apple's journal article, or something along those lines that might be more helpful information to include in the title field. And then we've completed what we need to do for this. Inserting a link, and we can click OK. Now we can hardly see, but there is a link. The text is now showing green with an underline, and if we hover our cursor over it, it now shows test document to show that that hover text is showing up properly. That's how you insert a link. Now conversely, if you want to remove the link that you've made, all you need to do is click into wherever you have a hyperlink on your page and remove that link. Now, a note on hyperlinks and web pages. For web accessibility purposes, it's best not to expose a web address on your web page, but instead to include it within the text, sentence text or paragraph text that you might have on your page. So for example, we've done what's called a descriptive hyperlink. That's just part of the regular text that's on our page. Instead of saying something like visit://cnr.msu.edu/abcd123_ special character, who knows what. Because if a screen reader reads visit http blah, 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 they might not understand what it is they're actually clicking on. But this descriptive link with test document as part of a regular sentence on my page might help to give them a better framework for that content. There's also an option to include an anchor on the page. If you use this button, it allows you to insert an anchor that will jump you down to specific content on the page. So for example, you have heading A and heading B on the page, and you want to include an anchor so that you would actually jump down to what heading B might be on the page. So I'm going to put my cursor in front of heading B. I'm going to select the anchor button and type in whatever name I would like for this anchor. It's usually something very short. There's no spaces. So I'm just going to type in heading B and click OK. And now there's a little anchor symbol that is showing up on the screen here. And normally with anchor tags, you tend to have a bullet list at the top of your web page. So I'll put heading A and heading B. And then normally you would select for the text that you want to make that link to. So you're going to insert, edit link again. And this time there's actually a field for anchors that shows up. So we're going to select for the anchor that we just created. Again, for that title field, we need to have some information for the anchor link. So I'll just say heading B again, the OK button. And now when we hover our cursor over that, it's going to say heading B. And what this will do when it goes live is when we click on heading B as a link, it will jump us down on the page to where heading B lives on the page. And that's how you insert an anchor. Now let's say we want to add an image onto the page. You want to put your cursor where you would like that image to appear. And you're going to click on the Insert Edit Image button. This is going to bring up the Insert Edit Image window. And you have the option under Source to select for that folder with the spyglass, because you either have to use a photo that's already been uploaded to your website or you need to upload a photo to your website. So we're back at that Select a File window. We're going to click on the plus sign. We're going to navigate to our folder for uploads and for images this time. And we're going to upload new file. Select files. This brings us to the upload files window where we can select for files to upload. We're going to navigate on our website, on our computer for where our content is going to live. I'm going to select a photo that I would like to add to my page. Click Open. This will then add this information onto the screen so that I can see that that's what will be uploaded. And then we need to take an action. You can save and publish or unpublish. Now this is extremely important because it's very intuitive to want to click on the Save button when you're uploading a file or uploading an image to your website. But unfortunately, you don't ever want to do that. You always want to select for Save and Publish. Now the reason for this is because if you only select for save, dotCMS just saves that content as unpublished. And even if you publish your web page, it will not publish your file or your image. So you always need to select for save and publish. This is going to prepare that file or that image for the publishing process. And it won't tend to get picked up unless somebody actually knows this exact file name that we're showing on the screen. If they type that into a Google search, they might be able to find that image that way. But most often, that's not a reason not to save and publish your file or your image. So we're going to go ahead and select for save and publish, and then we're going to select the execute button. It is now taking that file uploading process. It's just going to take it a minute here. And then what it should do is pop your image into this upper left-hand corner of your screen. Now, if for some reason it doesn't, and you have a lot of images that are on your website to where you have more than one window to view, you can always put your cursor in the filter field and type in the first couple of letters of that file name, and it should pop it right up for you to be able to select for it. Now I've selected for that source, and then we get to image description. Now, image description is for those folks who are using the screen reader to navigate the website. They're going to need to have some kind of description of this image that they cannot see on the screen. So this particular file name contains some information that doesn't really make sense if it's going to be read out loud. So what I might type instead is cyclists riding at sunset. You want to include punctuation in there. And then that will read that out to the folks who are using Screen Reader to read this content. Now in terms of dimensions, you are able to upload images to the website in their full size without needing to resize them. There are some exceptions to that, which I won't go over at this time, but those partially include things like a photo for a person profile. And the tutorials for those will walk into that, go over that content in more detail. All right, so the dimensions for this particular image happen to be quite large, 42,000 by 28,000 pixels. So we need to size this down so that it will appear properly on the page. So I'm going to select for, say, 300, oops, by 200, constrained proportions is selected, and then that will resize it to a proper size. You can also include a caption on the page. You need to check the checkbox. So a caption means that there will be text that will actually show up underneath that image. And then your caption here, this is where you would actually type in whatever content that you would like to appear underneath that image, like cyclists riding sunset, period. An alignment, you can select for left or right, or you can leave it defaulted to none. OK button. And now we have the cyclist riding at sunset. Your image is highlighted blue. There are some radial buttons that you are able to click on. Now this is where I need to bring up one of the bugs in dotCMS related to using the Chrome browser. We've been asked to use the Chrome browser as our default browser for editing our website content in dotCMS. And unfortunately, if you click away from this particular image in dotCMS, it will lose the blue highlight and the radial buttons, and then you won't be able to edit it again. But if it stays in the format that it's in, where it's blue with the radial buttons, and you're in Chrome, you would be able to still select for it and make what edits you might like. So let's say, for example, include caption. We don't want that. We don't want the caption showing. We're going to click OK. Now we're going to notice that our caption's gone, but also our blue highlight and the radial buttons are gone. So how you can get around this is log in using the Firefox browser, navigate to where this content generic is saved in the back end of your website. Then you will be able to lock that content for editing and actually click on it, because if I try to click on it in Chrome here, nothing's going to happen. So you can make edits to images if you've clicked away from them by going to the Firefox browser and logging into dotCMS. All right, so that's the basics for how you add and edit a web page onto your web page. All right, so next is an option to insert a YouTube video, and to do that, you would put your cursor on the screen wherever you would like. You would insert the code that would have been provided by YouTube, the web address, or the code itself, and you want to select for Make Responsive. Make Responsive would mean that no matter if I'm using a cell phone or a television screen or a monitor, computer monitor to view this particular web page, that Make Responsive means it's going to change that size of that video so that I can see the entire video on my screen. And then source code, this is where if you have a video that is not a YouTube video, you can get the code for Vimeo or for MediaSpace and paste in your content in the actual code for the page. And that covers the basics of the Wysiwyg Editor. The date tab is something that we don't usually do anything with, so I'm not going to say anything about that. And then the relationships tab, you're going to notice that there really isn't anything to relate here because your container of content is going to inherit the relationships from the actual page it's being added to. So at this point, we need to take an action to either save or save and publish our content. Again, if we just click the Save button, it's going to lock our content because it's the first time it's been saved. Then we can select for the X button, and we can now see that our container is showing up on our test page. And if we go to the preview screen, we can see what it's going to look like live. Now, the reason that we were actually able to create that container of content by saving it and having it locked was because it was brand new content. Now, if we click back in to edit this container of content, we're going to see that we need to click on lock for editing again. Now, let's say, for example, we want to save and publish this content, have it go live. We're going to click on save and publish, and it should lock our content for us. Now, there is another tutorial out there about locking and unlocking or editing your container of content on the page, and that has a little bit more of these details within that. Now that you have your container of content that's appearing on your test page, you now need to take that final action to save and publish your content. Again, save would save the page in the back end. Unpublished, you would need to unlock your page, or save and publish would actually publish that content live. And that information is also covered in another training video.